Are you ready to tell him that?
We do count, and I want to say to everybody under the sound of my voice this afternoon that you are somebody. Don't let anybody make you feel that you are nobody. You are somebody. You have dignity, you have worth. Don't be ashamed of yourself, and don't be ashamed of your heritage. Don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your hair. I am black and beautiful, and not ashamed to say it. It is a known fact that every politician respects votes, and we have enough potential voting power here to change anything that needs to be changed. And so let us set out to do it, and to do it in no uncertain terms. And finally, I want to say to you that if we will organize like this, we have a power that can change.
Martin Luther King Jr., an African-American clergyman and civil rights leader, was fatally shot at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4, 1968 at 6:01 p.m. He was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where he died at 7:05 p.m. He was a prominent leader of the civil rights movement and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, who is also known for his use of nonviolence and civil disobedience. James Earl Ray, a fugitive from the Missouri State Penitentiary, was arrested on June 8, 1968 at London's Heathrow Airport, extradited to the United States and charged with the crime. On March 10, 1969, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 99 years in the Tennessee State Penitentiary. He later made many attempts to withdraw his guilty plea and to be tried by a jury, but was unsuccessful. Ray died in prison in 1998. The King family and others believe that the assassination was the result of a conspiracy involving the U.S. government, the Mafia, and Memphis police, as alleged by Lloyd Jowers in 1993.
One of the larger stains the FBI has ever had to endure on its not-so-spotless record was revealed in its entirety Thursday, a letter asking Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself, signed, sealed, and delivered by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. The letter was discovered by a Yale history professor who penned an op-ed for the New York Times. Beverly Gage notes the letter occupies a unique place in the history of American intelligence, the most notorious and embarrassing example of Hoover's FBI run amok. The letter, known as the Suicide Letter, refers to the leader of the civil rights movement as sexually psychotic, a dissolute, abnormal imbecile, and a fraud. It ends with the famous warning, "You have just 34 days. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." The letter, along with a purported audio tape of MLK's extramarital affairs, was sent to the King home and discovered by his wife, Coretta Scott King. Dr. King assumed the letter and tape were from the FBI, and after his death, a Senate committee confirmed as much. In an age where whistleblowers like Edward Snowden have exposed just how far agencies like the NSA or FBI can reach, the newly released full version of the Suicide Letter is worrisome to many. The Electronic Frontier Foundation released a statement on the letter. The implications of these types of strategies in the digital age are chilling. Imagine Facebook chats, porn viewing history, emails, and more made public to discredit a leader who threatens the status quo or used to blackmail. These are not far-fetched ideas, and Vox calls the letter a terrifying reminder of what government surveillance agencies can be capable of.
They believe that Ray was a scapegoat. In 1999, the family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Jowers for the sum of $10 million. During closing arguments, their attorney asked the jury to award damages of $100 to make the point that it was not about the money. During the trial, both sides presented evidence alleging a government conspiracy. The accused government agencies could not defend themselves or respond because they were not named as defendants. Based on the evidence, the jury concluded that Jowers and others were part of a conspiracy to kill King and awarded the family the symbolic $100 they requested in damages. The allegations and the finding of the Memphis jury were later disputed by the United States Department of Justice in 2000 due to perceived lack of evidence. The assassination was one of 4 major assassinations in the 1960s in the United States, coming several years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963 and the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965, and 2 months before the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in June 1968. As early as the mid-1950s, King had received death threats because of his prominence in the civil rights movement. He had confronted the risk of death, including a nearly fatal stabbing in 1958, and made its recognition part of his philosophy. He taught that murder could not stop the struggle for equal rights. After the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, King told his wife, Coretta Scott King, "This is what is going to happen to me also. I keep telling you, this is a sick society." King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, in support of striking African-American city sanitation workers. The workers had staged a walkout on February 11, 1968, to protest unequal wages and working conditions imposed by Mayor Henry Loeb. At the time, Memphis paid black workers significantly lower wages than it did white workers. There were no city-issued uniforms, no restrooms, no recognized union, and no grievance procedure for the numerous occasions on which they were underpaid. During Loeb's tenure as mayor, conditions did not significantly improve, and the gruesome February 1968 deaths of 2 workers in a garbage compacting truck turned mounting tensions into a strike. King participated in a massive march in Memphis on March 28, 1968, which ended in violence.
As the truck was going back to the workplace, the truck turned on in the back, and Mr. Cole was sitting in the truck. Dad was in the truck, but he was standing up. And once the truck began to move, Mr. Cole tried to get out the truck, but his shoes continued to flip. And Dad realized that the truck was coming down, and he reached for him to get him to help him. And while helping him, it engulfed both of them.
But what happened to him, I will never forget. And they came and knocked on my door. And I told my mom, I said, there's 2 police cars out there. When I said, Mom, I said, they come to tell us that our dad was gone. And she said, go on, girl, get on over there. You know what you're talking about. You just 8 years old. I said, no, Mom, they come to tell you our dad is gone. And when she opened the door, they told me my dad was gone, and she fell out. And we were just crying, and they said, we need all y'all to come to the hospital and identify y'all's dad.
I think it looked like Dad hollering, get up, and him not being able to get up. I could see him just reaching for him and pulling, ain't caring about his life. When they got him out, they told my mom that their hands was locked into each other. My dad and Mr. Cole. My father's death and Mr. Cole's death set off a fire in black people. And that fire gave them strength. It was no fear there. And they went demanding freedom. Martin Luther King, he was already in place. He knew it was going to be some heartaches. He knew it was going to be some big losses. But to get to what we was asking for, praying for, someone had to give up something. I had to give up that.
On April 3rd, King returned to Memphis to attend a successful New March later that week. His airline flight to Memphis was delayed by a bomb threat, but he arrived in time to make a planned speech to a gathering at the Mason Temple, world headquarters of the Church of God in Christ. At the Mason Temple, King delivered his famous "I've been to the mountaintop" speech. In it, he recalled his 1958 attempted assassination, noting that the doctor who treated him had said that because the knife used to stab him was so close to his aorta, any sudden movement, even a sneeze, might have killed him. He referred to a letter written by a young girl who told him that she was happy that he had not sneezed. He used that reference to say, "I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960, when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961, when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation and interstate travel." King repeated the phrase, "if I had sneezed," several more times, recalling numerous other events and acts of civil disobedience from the previous several years. The Albany Movement, 1962, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, and the Selma to Montgomery March, 1965. As he neared the close, he prophetically referred to the bomb threat.
Of the freedom of assembly, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of press, somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
On Thursday, April 4th, 1968, King was staying in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. The motel was owned by businessman Walter Bailey and was named after his wife. Ralph Abernathy, a colleague and friend, later told the House Suspect Committee on Assassinations that he and King had stayed in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel so often that it was known as the King Abernathy Suite. According to biographer Taylor Branch, King's last words were to musician Ben Branch, who was scheduled to perform that night at a planned event. King said, "Ben, make sure to play Take My Hand, Precious Lord, in the meeting tonight. Play it real pretty." According to Reverend Samuel Kiles, who was standing several feet away, King was leaning over the balcony railing in front of room 306 and was speaking with Reverend Jesse Jackson when the shot rang out. King was struck in the face at 6:01 p.m. by a single .30-06 bullet fired from a Remington Model 760 rifle. The bullet entered through King's right cheek, breaking his jaw and several vertebrae as it traveled down his spinal cord, severing his jugular vein and major arteries in the process before lodging in his shoulder. The force of the shot ripped King's necktie off. King fell backward onto the balcony, unconscious. Abernathy heard the shot from inside the motel room and ran to the balcony to find King on the deck, bleeding profusely from the wound in his cheek. Jesse Jackson stated after the shooting that he cradled King's head as King lay on the balcony, but this account was disputed by other colleagues of King. Jackson later changed his statement to say that he had reached out for King. Andrew Young, a colleague from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, first believed King was dead, but found he still had a pulse. King was rushed to St. Joseph's Hospital, where doctors opened his chest and performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation. He never regained consciousness and died at 7:05 p.m. According to Branch, King's autopsy revealed that his heart was in the condition of a 60-year-old man, rather than that of a 39-year-old such as King, which Branch attributed to the stress of King's 13 years in the civil rights movement. Shortly after the shot was fired, witnesses saw a man, later believed to be James Earl Ray, fleeing from a rooming house across the street from the Lorraine Motel. Ray had been renting a room in the boarding house.
Dr. King left his room, 306, at the Lorraine Hotel just before dinner to get some air. He walked over to the railing at this spot, and noticing some friends below, he leaned over and began to speak with them. Police say 205 feet away, in a window in a flophouse, the assassin waited. He waited, police believe, in a bathroom down the hall from the room he rented but 4 hours earlier. To get a clear shot of his victim, the assassin apparently had to stand in the bathtub, leaning forward to brace his arms on the window ledge to steady his rifle. And this was the view he got. He fired a single shot, hitting his target squarely, and then he ran. Out of the bathroom and along the decrepit hallway, turning, he raced down the rickety wood stairs and out. One policeman said he simply failed.
Police found a package dumped close to the site that included a rifle and binoculars, both with Ray's fingerprints. Ray had purchased the rifle under an alias 6 days earlier. A worldwide manhunt was triggered that culminated in Ray's arrest at Heathrow Airport, London, 2 months later. On March 10, 1969, he pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Martin Luther King Jr., which was later recanted. King's widow, Coretta, had difficulty informing her children that their father was dead. She received a large number of telegrams, including one from Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, that she regarded as the one that had touched her the most. For some, King's assassination meant the end of the strategy of nonviolence. Others in the movement reaffirmed the need to carry on King's and the movement's work. Leaders within the SCLC confirmed that they would carry on the Poor People's Campaign that year, despite the loss of King. Some black leaders argued the need to continue King's and the movement's tradition of nonviolence. During the day of the assassination, while on the campaign trail for the Democratic presidential nomination in Indiana, Senator Robert F. Kennedy learned of the shooting before boarding a plane to Indianapolis. Kennedy was scheduled to make a speech there in a predominantly black neighborhood. Kennedy did not learn that King had died until he landed in Indianapolis. Kennedy's press secretary, Frank Mankiewicz, suggested that he ask the audience to pray for the King family and to follow King's practice of nonviolence. Mankiewicz and speechwriter Adam Walensky drafted notes for Kennedy's use, but he refused them, using some that he had likely written during the ride to the site of the speech. The Indianapolis chief of police advised Kennedy that he could not provide him protection and was worried that he would be at risk when talking about King's death before the predominantly black crowd. However, Kennedy decided to proceed. Standing on a flatbed truck, he spoke for 4 minutes and 57 seconds. Kennedy was the first to tell the audience that King had died. Some of the attendees screamed and wailed in grief. Several of Kennedy's aides were worried that the delivery of this information would result in a riot. When the audience quieted, Kennedy acknowledged that many would be filled with anger. He said, "For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart at the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man." These remarks surprised his aides, who had never heard him speak publicly of his brother's death. Kennedy said that the country had to make an effort to go beyond these rather difficult times, and quoted a poem by the Greek playwright Aeschylus. "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart until, in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." In conclusion, he said that the country needed and wanted unity between blacks and whites, and asked the audience members to pray for the King family and the country, again quoting the Greeks. Kennedy's speech was credited with assisting in the prevention of post-assassination rioting in Indianapolis on a night when such events broke out in major cities across the country. It is likely considered one of the greatest speeches in American history. I agree.
Do they know about Martin Luther King?
We have left it up to you.
Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land, with an effort to understand compassion and love. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. We can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness, and it's not the end of disorder. But the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land. And dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and for our people. Thank you very much.
Kennedy canceled all of his scheduled campaign appearances and withdrew to his hotel room. Several phone conversations with black community leaders convinced him to speak out against the violent backlash beginning to emerge across the country. The next day, Kennedy gave a prepared response on the mindless menace of violence in Cleveland, Ohio. Although still considered significant, it is given much less historical attention than is the Indianapolis speech. President Lyndon B. Johnson was in the Oval Office that evening, planning a meeting in Hawaii with Vietnam War military commanders. After Press Secretary George Christian informed him at 8:20 p.m. of the assassination, he canceled the trip to focus on the nation. He assigned Attorney General Ramsey Clark to investigate the assassination in Memphis. He made a personal call to King's wife, Coretta Scott King, and declared April 7th a national day of mourning on which the U.S. flag would be flown at half-staff. Colleagues of King in the civil rights movement called for a nonviolent response to the assassination to honor his most deeply held beliefs. James Farmer Jr. said, Dr. King would be greatly distressed to find that his blood had triggered off bloodshed and disorder. I think instead the nation should be quiet, black and white, and we should be in a prayerful mood, which would be in keeping with his life. We should make that kind of dedication and commitment to the goals which his life served to solving the domestic problems. That's the memorial. That's the kind of memorial we should build for him. It's just not appropriate for there to be violent retaliations and that kind of demonstration in the wake of the murder of this pacifist and man of peace. However, the more militant Stokely Carmichael called for forceful action, saying, "White America killed Dr. King last night. She made it a whole lot easier for a whole lot of black people today. There no longer needs to be intellectual discussions. Black people know that they have to get guns. White America will live to cry that she killed Dr. King last night. It would have been better if she had killed Rat Brown and or Stokely Carmichael, because when she killed Dr. King, she lost." Despite the urging for calm by many leaders, a wave of riots erupted in more than 100 cities. After the assassination, the city of Memphis quickly settled the strike on favorable terms to the sanitation workers.
Since it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States, so I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see Riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. In the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention.
You walking up on me, I'm gonna grab you. Get y'all don't want this shit.
On April 8th, King's widow, Coretta Scott King, and her 4 young children led a crowd estimated at 40,000 in a silent march through the streets of Memphis to honor King and support the cause of the city's black sanitation workers. The next day, funeral rites were held in King's hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. The service at Ebenezer Baptist Church was nationally televised, as were other events. A funeral procession transported King's body for 3.5 miles through the streets of Atlanta, followed by more than 100,000 mourners, from the church to his alma mater, Morehouse College. A second service was held there before the burial. In the wake of King's assassination, journalists reported some callous or hostile reactions from parts of white America, particularly in the South. Oh geez, who would have thought? David Halberstrom, who reported on King's funeral, recounted a comment heard at an affluent white dinner party. One of the wives, station wagon, 3 children, $45,000 house, leaned over and said, "I wish you had spit in his face for me." It was a stunning moment. I wondered for a long time afterwards what King could possibly have done to her, in what conceivable way he could have threatened her. Why this passionate hate? Reporters recounted that many whites were also grief-stricken at the leader's death. In some cases, the shock of events altered opinions. A survey later sent to a group of college trustees revealed that their opinions of King had risen after his assassination. The New York Times praised King in an editorial, calling his murder a national disaster and his cause just. Public figures generally praised King in the days following his death. Others expressed political ideology. Governor George Wallace of Alabama, known as a segregationist, described the assassination as a senseless, regrettable act. Governor Lester Maddox of Georgia called King an enemy of our country and threatened to personally raise the state capitol flag back from half-staff. California Governor Ronald Reagan described the assassination as a great tragedy that began when we began compromising with law and order.
Law and order.
Or we will cease to have a country.
I am the law and order candidate.
And people started choosing which laws they break. Strom Thurmond wrote to his constituents, "We are now witnessing the whirlwind sowed years ago when some preachers and teachers began telling people that each man could be his own judge in his own case. The FBI Bureau of Investigation was assigned the lead to investigate King's death. J. Edgar Hoover,
That guy?
who had previously made efforts to undermine King's reputation, told President Johnson that his agency would attempt to find the culprit or culprits. Many documents related to the investigation remain classified and are stated to remain secret until 2027. In 2010, as in earlier years, some argued for passage of a proposed Records Collection Act, similar to a 1992 law concerning the Kennedy assassination, to require the immediate release of the records. The measure did not pass. Fucking hell. A crowd of 300,000 attended King's funeral on April 9th. Vice President Hubert Humphrey attended on behalf of Johnson, who was at a meeting on the Vietnam War at Camp David. There were fears that Johnson might be hit with protests and abuse over the war if he attended the funeral. At his widow's request, King's last sermon at Ebenezer Baptist Church was played at the funeral. It was a recording of his drum major sermon given on February 4th, 1968. In that sermon, he asked that at his funeral, no mention of his awards and honors be made, but that it be said he tried to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, be right on the Vietnam War question, and love and serve humanity. The FBI investigation found fingerprints on various objects left in the bathroom from which the gunfire had come. Evidence included a Remington Game Master rifle from which at least one shot had been fired. Fingerprints were traced to an escaped convict named James Earl Ray. 2 months after assassinating King, Ray was captured at London's Heathrow Airport while he was trying to depart the United Kingdom for white supremacist/colonial regimes in southern Africa, including Portuguese Angola, Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, or apartheid South Africa, on a false Canadian passport in the name of Raymond George Sneed. Ray was quickly extradited to Tennessee and charged with King's murder.